Hi, my name's Kevin Poorman, and today I have with me Alistair Higginbottom, one of the Q branch members at Salesforce. They work on all sorts of fun things, as you might imagine from the name. And Alistair is our product owner for Recruiting for Good. So today we're working on Recruiting for Good, and we're going to be doing some scoping work. We're going to be writing user stories and epics and working on what we are or are not going to do and what that might look like in terms of acceptance criteria for this project. This is the special fried turkey edition of Recruiting for Good, meaning it is set to air the day before Thanksgiving when we are all preparing for our fried turkeys and feast galore here in the United States. And so we are not live. This is a little bit of a misnomer. This is a pre-recorded version of this. But today with me, again, I have Alistair Higginbottom. Alistair, do you want to say a few words?
Yeah, hi Kevin. Glad to be here. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone.
Yay!
I've just discovered fried turkey, and it sounds amazing. I would love to try some soon.
It's one of those things where you're like, I'm not so sure about that, and then you taste it and you're like, that's delicious and terrible for me. And also, it's like a Swiss Army chainsaw. You can make it any way you want. You can flavor it any way you want it, but you might also accidentally cut off your own foot with it. And the ways in which you can hurt yourself while frying a turkey are legion. So we stick to roasting the turkey in the humble oven, or sometimes we smoke it on the grill. Now, I was recently talking to my boss, who's also in the UK, and it turns out y'all don't have a Thanksgiving.
No, no.
He was telling me that I was telling him, you got to get on that. You got to, like, let's start a letter writing campaign to the Queen. Let's have a Thanksgiving Day. Thanksgiving. Who could be against a Thanksgiving holiday? And he was like, well, actually, I think the more British thing would be to be like having an apology day. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to do with that.
So
So,
yeah, I think January the 27th, we all just get in a queue in the rain and apologise. We'd be very, very unhappy, but happy about it.
to who?
Everyone. I'm sorry right now for even bringing it up, and you brought it up.
I, I am I am dumbfounded. The things you learn about other cultures, it's fascinating. So here in the United States, if you're not from the United States, you should know that we have completely unhealthy feasts on Thanksgiving Day, and we're all pretty excited about it, to be honest. And then in in the UK, apparently they have an apology problem. So, with that said, when we last left our heroes, and by heroes I mean Alistair and I, we were working on epics. We were putting them on our GitHub as issues, and we had come up with these epics here, and we'd started working on. We'd gotten a few in for this one. We started on this one, but it occurs to me that I sort of work from top down, and that is just sort of that's the way I work. But that's not really a great way for us to work as a team. And I want to encourage Alistair to be like, no, we need to work on number 5 or something like that. So, Alistair, where should we start with our epics?
So yeah, for me, I think we need to start with the job. And so yeah, as we were writing these epics, we definitely started with the applicant and, as you say, worked our way down. I think that for me, the hiring process with diversity and equality, I know we touched on last time, but equally, I think the hiring managers to visualize the pipeline for filling jobs, I think is a really important thing, because any recruitment app needs to, obviously needs to be able to deliver that.
Okay. So let's start on that one. A way for hiring managers to visualize pipeline for filling a job. And I'm going to push back a little bit because I think before we could talk about a way to visualize the pipeline for filling a job, we also have to have a way for them to actually have jobs in the queue.
This is true.
So I'm going to switch over to GitHub here. We're going to do new issue. Okay. Apparently I need to sign in to GitHub. And okay. I don't need to come on. Oh, I'm in an incognito window. That's why. 1 second. There we go. Make this bigger. You try to set up for things and then like you get one thing wrong and it just goes off the rails. GitHub.com.
I only discovered Incognito Windows today.
Really?
Yeah, the developer told me to do it to sign into a test space. I felt like a hacker. I felt like Neo in the Matrix.
You just start seeing source code falling down from everywhere you look.
Yeah, basically. It was just little green turkeys dropping down the screen. It was awesome.
Little green turkeys. Okay. So we're going to do this a way for hiring managers. Hiring managers to create new jobs. And as a hiring manager, I have a process and just a process to create new job postings, listings, job listings, jobs to be filled. I'm sorry, what?
I said opportunities, but
job
is the trick.
So that I can get people hired. Okay, so this is just I'm going to give it a label of an epic. And I'm going to save this. And this is number 7. So when we go to create a new issue here, we can say story, and I'll come down here and say part of number 7. And this story is going to be, and we talked about this, doing this in various ways, where you've got like a job posting is like a V2 mom. Is one of the things we talked about. So a V2 mom wizard, that may be too prescriptive for creating a job posting, job to be filled.
Maybe something like a way to use the V2 mom to create a job advert.
How do you feel about a guided V2 mom creation tool?
I feel very positive about it indeed.
Creation tool for creating a job to be filled. Okay, so as what persona are we going to have here? This is probably hiring manager, you think?
Who'd be making the V2 mom? Yeah, I'd say so, because they know what they want from the job.
As a hiring manager, I need a guided tool for creating a job to be filled in the V2 mom format, so that I can start collecting, so I can get the job posted and filled as quickly as possible. Acceptance criteria. One of these days I'll learn how to spell acceptance. Not today. So what are some things you would expect to have there for the criteria, acceptance criteria for this kind of tool?
I think a concise list of values that could be used, like a list view of values. And you probably say the same for. Allow me to explain. So
yeah.
With the V2 Me, which is a personal version of the V2 Mom, which in this world we're creating, we would have applicants perhaps using the V2 Me as a cover letter rather than a CV or a resume. We try and make it as neat as possible, and so that you've got as much ability to draw data from it as possible, rather than having free form. My values are this, 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 and this, and you spell trust one way, I spell trust without a capital T, blah, blah, blah. We have a drop-down list so that people can add new values all the time. But what we want is to make sure that that list, and equally other parts of the V2Me we do as well, about what drivers people have. When I'm successful at work, I look like ... and then we provide a drop-down list, because then we can draw data out of it, and also brings that equivalency that if an employer is saying we want trust, we know the applicant can really know what they mean by trust.
Okay, so we want a let's say a configurable but set list of values for the V2Mom to select from.
Yeah.
Apparently I can't spell configurable either. But I'm going to say predefined list. Okay, so that's and a way for. We also want a way for them to create those or select from. Okay, so that covers that, and then so V2, the second one is vision.
Yeah.
Is that going to be freeform, or do we need to guide that as well?
So I feel like there's a spectrum here, as with most things, to find the right point to get to. So with the V2Me, it's very prescriptive. It's in X years, I want to be X at X level. And it is a really short, professionally focused vision, which you then build on throughout the rest of the document. I think that you probably want it less prescriptive than that, because when you're writing it about yourself, it's relatively easy to do that. Whereas if you're going to try and what's the vision of a job, in a drop down, it's going to be almost impossible, because every job's going to be different. I wonder if, in fact, it's probably better to thinking about accessibility, thinking about everything we talked about last week. Maybe we just have it sort of boxed so that it's small, rather than a huge highfalutin vision that runs over multiple paragraphs, perhaps a 2-sentence vision.
Maybe a tweet's worth.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's going to be freeform, but short and sweet. And I mean, part of me is also like, can we put in a buzzword bingo filter? Because one of my pet peeves is when you're looking at job postings and you're like, we want a rock star or a overperformer, and like, that's not quantifiable. Things like part of me wants to develop a buzzword bingo filter for these. Like, no, I'm sorry, you can't say you're looking for all-star for your team that has perfect work-life balance, because that doesn't tell you anything.
Yeah.
But okay, so limited characters, numbers. Go ahead.
What about if I really like that idea, and again, it talks to equivalency and transparency. I think that having some kind of like Curb Your Enthusiasm moment, like some kind of, when you say this, you mean this, but it sounds like this. And so the perfect one would be the sports analogies, and sports analogies are shown to be hugely difficult for a number of groups within society that traditionally aren't as involved in sports, in terms of othering them. So women in the boardroom, for example, lots of, hey, sport, let's knock it out of the park. It's very commonly recognized that it's a very covert way of othering people, and sort of building that internal culture or canteen culture. So I think something like, if you wanted to go down that route, I don't think stopping people writing stuff, but just helping them, from a you think you mean this, but what you actually mean is that. You think you mean this, but how you're being perceived is that. When you say knock it out of the park, you think you mean achieve greatness. Consider using achieve greatness.
Right. And what I don't want this is I don't want this to become like the recruiting for good equivalent of Clippy. For those of you who aren't well aware of Clippy, Clippy was a short-lived assistant for Microsoft Office that would help you do things. There's lots of memes and jokes. If you just search for Clippy, you'll find all sorts of fun there. But I like your sort of I coalesced what you said into perception awareness, and that like looking for words and phrases, and this has got to be something that's configurable that we can turn around and say, you said this, and we're not going to stop you from saying it, but you might consider this instead because the perception of it will be wider recognized, something like that.
Yeah, more accessible.
Yeah. Okay. So then we go on to
methods and measures.
Say that again.
Methods and measures, right?
Yeah, methods and measures, but we also have to do obstacles.
Yeah, so, we'll come to that at the end.
Okay.
I think when thinking about a job in the format of the V2 MOM, the methods and measures should be the easiest bit to do.
Right.
Because you know what you want people to do, and you know how you want to measure them. And I think, again, thinking about diversity and transparency and inclusion, arming people with really not only telling them what they're going to be measured on, but also showing that you really thought about it. You don't just want a salesperson that's going to smash it. You want someone that is going to be able to work in the telco industry and grow the year-on-year income by 25%, and has got experience of doing that. And that's a very clear ask, and someone can apply or say that's definitely not me, but no, it reduces ambiguity. So I think those two bits should be, from a user's perspective, very simple to do. He says with great confidence.
So I like that. My concern is that hiring managers who are used to a certain way of doing things may just, sort of copy and paste things into measurements and methods without giving them that thought. So how can we go about engineering this so that we are forcing them to do that thinking process, so that we are setting everyone on a level playing field, so that, hiring manager A is doing the same sort of work to think about what they're looking for in a candidate that hiring manager B is doing?
Is it we started off with the drop-down list in the values. Is there a way of thinking about a company-wide prescriptive list of, say, what methods? If you think about how we use the V2 MOM, so I'm thinking about Q branch, we've just got these 6 guiding principles, and everyone's V2 MOM is going to have methods on those 6 guiding principles. So assuming Q branch we're going to hire, we would say each job description needs to have 2 measures on each of those 6 methods. So you've got that, they're automatically there. But then I suspect if you had, you could say, I'm just trying to think in how we've seen this. When I say in Salesforce, I don't mean internally, I mean in the platform. But almost like you could have any amount of drop down, 6 drop downs, and then the measures would be what type of measures. So you'd be like, we build as one and we speak as one would be one of our guiding principles, and then it'd be a customer facing measure or a ACV measure or a, do you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, I could see hiring managers doing a lot of pushback on that, because while your team is structured enough to have 6 guiding principles, I'm going to venture a guess that is a rarity, that not a lot of other teams have those. I'm not saying they don't have any idea, but to have them so clearly defined would be, I think, more rare than we would like. So my question is, what can we do to guide measures and methods such that they are like the thing that I want an applicant to walk away from this is, I'm reading this and now I have a good idea of what my job is going to look like on a day-to-day basis. So I want us to have. I really think that we should present the methods and measurements together. So, like, whatever this method is, here's the measurements that go with it. When the hiring manager is filling out that form, for lack of a better word. But I'm struggling to see if there, and it may be that this has to be sort of like a further improvement down the line because may not have an answer for it right now. But the idea of somehow guiding the creation of those methods and measurements. The more I think about it, one of the guy who hired me to work at Salesforce, he always ran around saying crawl, walk, run, and so I think like the crawl level of this is create a method, create a measurement or measurements for it, and then we come back and we can say add some guidance to that later. Method. So I'm going to say, just for the sake of making sure we have something down here, this is going to be paired together and free form for now. What do you think about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good, because hopefully, once we get to that point, we can do some user testing with recruiters and hiring managers and say, what do you put in here? And we can see if they're just cutting and pasting, get them to do 5 and they'll find an efficiency, I'm sure.
Yeah, so I'm going to do this. You're not going to let me indent. Oh, here we go. No. What I want to do is put this here. Crawl is freeform. Walk is written guidance on the page. Run is, we don't know yet. And then we have obstacles. Obstacles could be fun. The snarky side of me is like corporate culture, or those things that are sort of silent obstacles to any career. But
personally, I think if we've got someone using this app and we've gone in, use this app because it'll increase transparency, then I think we need to assume people are taking the high road and seeing the obstacles both from an applicant's perspective and the job poster's perspective as an opportunity for greater transparency and openness. So I see from a V2Me applicant perspective, the obstacles would be, what are your areas for development? Where do you want to grow over the next 2 years? And if you don't, it would be an obstacle, which is, I think, is a reasonable thing to say. And I think no applicant is going to say that unless the recruiter is too. And I think, grow your ACV by 25%. What are the obstacles? Well, actually, there's 3 companies in here that are ahead of us in every deal. And it really helps set the scene, but also gives that person an opportunity to talk about their experiences. But actually, I've had an experience where, and then they can use a competency-based question and say, well, actually, there was a time when I dealt with competition and I took initiative and leadership, and then they can talk about their values. All of a sudden, it loops back around quite nicely. So I do think that the obstacles should be job specific, or at least team specific. I don't want the job board to be like, oh, the guy that sits on the desk next to you he's not good. But
I just see some hiring manager putting like the hiring manager as an obstacle and just leaving it that.
So I think a suitably high enough level that it's not, the obstacle is that you have to work with Bob, but not so much of like, it does not like a corporate obstacle necessarily. I think it needs to be specific, because you want the applicant to be specific and open about the opportunities for development and obstacles that they will face.
I think
So
we
for
should.
me, for example, like I would put education. So I don't have a degree, and working in a big American corporate without a degree, it is a significant obstacle because, you know, nearly every job says I need to have a degree. So, you know, that's just something that I want to be open and transparent about. Whereas actually with a CV, I just don't put education on my CV. And if people interview me, they don't ever think to ask. But I'd quite like to be open about it because that gives me an opportunity to talk about, well, what else was I doing? And what did I learn? And how did I display my values during that period of time? But you know, I think you need to have that level of specificity. That's not a word, but you know what I mean.
I want to take what you just said and I want to condense it. I mean, not right now, but I want to condense what you just said down into a paragraph and put that on the page, so for the hiring managers there, because I want to provide some guidance in all of this, and I don't want I don't want somebody to get to the point where they're like filling this out and then they get to obstacles and they're like, I don't know what to do, and so they don't put anything down. So giving them that guidance there, I think, is going to be crucial.
Yeah.
So we've got a way for them to create a job to be filled in the V2MOM format with some acceptance criteria here. Are there other things we want in this acceptance criteria?
I'm actually struggling to read your as a hiring manager.
Oh, I'm sorry. Here, let me
read it again, and then I'll. Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Well, we've highlighted filled as quickly as possible, so I feel like we've dealt with the V2MOM format. But you know, if you want to fill it as quickly as possible,
Do we want to?
Guess.
Do we want to maybe?
Oh, sorry, I think there's a delay.
Sorry, go ahead. You first.
To me, the quickest way of getting that job filled is to make sure that your applicant is using the similar format. Like if you're going to commit to using the format, then your applicant needs to understand what that format is, and if they can speak in those same blocks, then that's going to give you an opportunity to be very efficient in unlocking which is the right candidate.
And I think we've got that in our applicant side that we worked on last week with the V2Me side. So I'm going to say I agree with you, but I don't think it should go in this story. I think it should go in one of the ones we did last week. And I'm pretty sure we did that. I'm going to say this is probably a good set of acceptance criteria, so I'm going to submit this. And now we have our story for that. If we could look at our issues here. We've also got an epic for hiring managers to create new jobs. We also wanted to talk about the epic for how did we phrase it? Try the right thing. A way for hiring managers to visualize the pipeline for filling a job. And so this is going to be for hiring managers. As a hiring manager, I want to see how do we phrase this? Is it a report? Is it? I don't really think it's
just a visualization.
A visualization of my open jobs to be filled and the status of applicants for those jobs in our the status, the position, I
think status works.
Status of the applicants for in our job, in our hiring process.
Yeah.
So that I can quickly understand where we are in the process. Not entirely sure that's a grammatically sane sentence, but we'll go with it. But that seem okay.
Yeah.
And then that's our epic, so that we just stop there. And this is gonna be.
I think this one kind of writes itself. I mean, a lot of the acceptance criteria for this, thinking about dashboards, thinking about wanting quick insight and data.
Yep.
I think
story dashboard for pipeline dashboard.
Yeah.
Part of, and we'll say, as a hiring manager, I have access to a pipeline dashboard showing the process of showing the status of applicants to my open jobs, so that I can quickly understand where we are and share that with the team. So let's see, for the acceptance criteria we have a dashboard.
Yep.
It has some sort of visualization. Should that be
Yep.
like a pipeline visualization, or?
Well, I think that there would need to be a number of different views that you would want, isn't there? So there's the overall pipe, but then you can drill to individual jobs.
Okay.
And then like an overview. So there's an overview. Sorry, I'm going to say all this in English in a moment. A pipeline of jobs, and then drill down. A pipeline of all applicants, and then drill down. And then all stages, and then drill down to by stage. Kind of what I'm thinking.
Okay. Now, are you familiar with Einstein analytics?
I am aware of it.
You're aware of it? I was just thinking maybe this could be like one thing, like an Einstein analytics view that we can dive into, that sort of thing. But the idea is that the overall pipe view is going to show us all jobs and all candidates and their respective stages.
Yeah. Kind of seeing like a funnel view, like in an innovation funnel.
So the drill down into a job is going to show a given job, all the candidates for that job, and their respective stages. A pipeline of all applicants will show you all candidates and their respective stages for all jobs.
Yeah.
And then all candidates in a given stage.
And then one thing I think, given what we're trying to do about filling jobs quickly, maybe a look at e-commerce and do a bit of other hiring managers with similar type roles also looked at this candidate. Do you know what I mean? Like,
no, say more.
Well, if you think about, you look on Amazon and you look at some Wellington boots and...
Okay, first off, pause. What are Wellington boots?
A second I said it, I was like, oh, I sound so English. Wellington boots, gum boots?
Gum boots.
Galoshes, maybe? Like, what do you wear in the rain?
Wellington boots. Here's what we do. We just Google it.
Google it.
Oh!
Translate.
Rain boots.
There we go.
Yeah, we're boring.
If you were to look at those on Amazon and you wanted a green pair of boots, it'd offer you 100 different choices, right? You select one, which could be your applicant, and it's say people that viewed this have also viewed, and then all of a sudden, you're maybe you set it up so that every applicant that gets past a certain stage remains in a pool for 3 months or something, and is pushed to other managers. So if you're a UX designer in Q branch or a UX designer in your team, then it could be that we fast track that. And equally, so you're pushing that to other people looked at this applicant, you should look at them, but maybe it's then for the applicant it's the other way around, and it's like other applicants with similar qualifications to you or similar B2 to you looked at these jobs, reach out to the hiring manager.
Amazon recommendation style. I like that. I have, like, from an engineering perspective, I have no idea how to do that. So that's going to be fun and exciting. I enjoy a good challenge. Sort of the whole, like, and I can see this working from two ways. Like, you applied for this job, you didn't get it. Have you considered these jobs? Or like, hey, we didn't hire Susie, but Susie looks like a good match for your job. So hiring manager B, here's Susie,
Exactly.
or Sally, or whatever. I like that a lot, because I feel like the feedback I got from our recruiting subject matter experts is one of the hardest things to do is just getting a feel for the person's expertise and skill set. And if you've already got that, being able to keep that around and then say, hey, have you thought about this one? I really like that. Okay, so I'm going to hit submit on this one. We can talk about other things in the pipeline dashboard, but I think that really covers it. And
just to remind you, you said that you want to spend some time on prioritization.
I do want to spend some time on prioritization, but let's look at our issues overall. And do we have this one? I need to tag correctly, but do we have other things other epics or stories we want to work on? Now, again, for those of you playing along at home, this is a woefully inadequate list of actual stories. These will have to get broken down in some cases, and more will have to be written and prioritized and that sort of thing. But this is we did this exercise to show you how a product owner and like an engineering team can sit down and start talking through these things and brainstorming and putting together a framework of what needs to be done. So we've gotten our epics and our stories, at least some of the stories in here. If we look at prioritizing them, where would you start? As the product owner, what do you think we should work on first?
The person's going to pay for it. So I feel like you've got recruiting manager, recruiter, agency recruiters, all of those essentially, and then applicants. They all roll up into the hiring manager. But then the recruiting manager, because they're the ones that are going to pay for any recruiting software, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like making it work for them, the recruiters and the hiring managers, the agency recruiters will want it to work for them, but they will also work within the parameters set by their clients. And applicants, I think as long as we are advocating for the applicants and this way of working and this transparency, then we can influence what the technology does, so that when we come to look at that user group, it's sort of ready for them. Yeah, I think I have learned painfully that you can build something that's beautiful for one user group. If they're not the user group, they're going to have to adopt it and have to pay for it and have to actually make it work for them. Then you've you've developed the wrong user group, unfortunately.
This sounds like one of those times where I'm curious as to the backstory behind this, but we shouldn't go into that right now. But it just occurs to me that you sound like you're speaking from experience. Okay, so it makes sense to prioritize starting the work on this from the perspective of bringing value, or I like to say the quickest time to joy for the group that is going to be the one signing off on its purchase and its use. So as a hiring manager, as a recruiting, what did we call that? We had our head of recruiting here was our persona that we chose to the name we chose for that one. And again, by the way, this is in our public notes file and Quip. And so in the show notes link on the bottom of this page that you're watching this video on, you'll be able to jump directly into this and see it. But we don't actually have anything in here for the head of recruiting. We don't have any epics or stories that mention them.
Good.
So, and like the engineering part of me is also like, well, we got to figure out the data model and the objects and all that sort of stuff. But if we were to prioritize getting something of value into the hands of the head of recruiting, what would that look like to you?
I think it would look like something that increases the speed and the efficacy with which you fill jobs. And if they're a good head of recruiting, something that at least enables equality, if not equity, amongst applicants.
So
to bring them the biggest breadth of perspective into the business.
Okay. So how do we quantify that is my question. Like, what is it we want to be able to, if we say we're going to go build this for a month and then come back and have a check-in with you and with the head of recruiting, what is it we want the head of recruiting to see after a month that makes them feel like we're on the right track? And I'm using the word feel very intentionally here because you can technically be on the right track, and if the people who are going to pay and use this software don't feel that way, then it doesn't mean much.
Sure. It's a jolly good question.
And I chose 4 weeks at random. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the sort of structure that we're building this around, while Alistair thinks about my loaded question there, I'm going to explain a little bit about how agile software development works or has worked in my experience. And what happens is you have these epics and you break them down into stories, and then your team gets together and they say, okay, for a sprint, which is generally a 2-week or a 3-week period of time, we have the ability to do this story and that story. And that's sort of a social contract that says we're going to work on these things and we're going to deliver them in this period of time. On the flip side, the business can't go turn around and change what we're doing in that 2 weeks. So you can't be like, JK, we're not really going to go build this. We're going to have you build this other thing without it being a big deal. And so I chose 4 weeks because that's, in my head, 2 sprints. And so what can we get done in 2 sprints and demo to our stakeholders such that they feel we're on the right track?
So I think, given everything we're talking about, I think there's a couple of things. I think it's important that they're positive, because mostly you want this needs to be an aspirational tool.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about feel. I think you want to reduce focus on resolving negatives and more on bigging up. So I think, firstly, increased visibility. So I think we've talked about visualizations. I think there needs to be a centralized visualization for the whole organization, of their recruitment pipe, of how that maps to the strategy.
Okay, so this pipeline dashboard story, is that a fair? What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a milestone. I'm going to say sprint 1.
Yeah, so I think this story needs to start at the highest level and work down to the recruiter,
Okay.
like an org chart almost.
Hmm. I'm gonna write that
Um,
down in our. So we talked about um, app needs to be written top down with respect to showing value,
yeah,
like an org chart. So we first want to show value to head of recruiting, then hiring managers, recruiters, and applicants. Is that a good order?
yeah. Don't forget agency recruiters though.
Oh, yeah. Recruiters, agency, recruiters, and applicants. All right, I want to take that note there.
So if
Um,
we've got that, if we should we do this in those notes
in those
really
notes, okay.
quickly? I'm thinking, well, if you want increased visibility from the top down, so that's good. But then you need to know what you're having visibility on. So I think a couple of key metrics would be reduced time to day one, like a reduced time to actually starting the job.
Okay. I feel like that's probably not a great metric because we may hire someone and then they may not be able to start for 3 weeks. So maybe for reduce time to hired.
Yes, okay. To offer, I think.
To
Is what
offer.
we
Okay,
say,
that's
isn't
that's probably the best way to do it. Reduce time to
it?
offer.
And then there was one less positive, but I thought if you a way of showing that you're getting people that are a better match for you and they understand the job and you understand them and what they need would be a reduction in ghosting, which I think translates.
Ooh.
But like it's a real issue, especially within corporates, of people going through the process and then find out at the point of offer, well, actually, you're not paying me. And, we had a complete mismatch. I thought this was a VP level and you're telling me it's an associate level. Or, they just don't turn up.
I like it.
And then again, it's a bit of a blunt brush, and you could break down into multiple different metrics, but I think an increase in diversity.
Diversity in hiring or diversity in applicant pool?
Hiring.
In hiring.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then again, thinking about seeing a quality, if we're doing crawl, walk, run, then diversity would be crawl, equality would be walk, and then equity would be run. But how do you quantify that? So I feel like potentially as simple as sentiment feedback from applicants, both successful and unsuccessful, and then increase, get a baseline from the current state, and then some kind of net promoter score or something.
Yeah, we got to figure out how to do that because I imagine like if I've just applied and gone through a process for a job that I really wanted and I didn't get it, being asked for feedback on that process is probably not going to go the way we want it to.
Well, I think I agree. I get that completely. Glassdoor does it, but that's obviously a third party, rather than, hey, you applied to join Acme 123, you didn't get into Acme 123. Can you tell us about Acme 123? But equally, if you're having this ongoing conversation with people, you're like, you got to stage 6 and you weren't successful, but you got to stage 6. That's pretty amazing. We have a 3-month pool and blah blah blah. in the meantime, it'd be brilliant to hear, how can we improve our process from your perspective? Did you get enough feedback? Was it clear to you what was expected of you at every stage?
Yeah.
Did you understand what the job entailed? Did you understand the package that came with the job, or the potential package, or whatever?
I like it.
And mostly because, if we have equity as the gold standard, then I think you really need to start building out a data set in your own context of what support do people need? How do you meet people where they're at? I think is the current term, isn't it? And I think it's right, because a lot of what we've talked about is about equivalency and transparency. But how do you need a metric? How is someone gonna? Everyone says warm, happy, fluffy things, but actually you need cold hard numbers at the end of the day.
Okay. Let's see here. There's nothing on here I disagree with, but that is way too much for 4 weeks of work.
Do you know this is why my developers don't like me?
Oh, really? I can't imagine why. Here's what I'm going to do. One of the things I really love about Quip is that I can convert these to to-dos, and if I to can do, I can change the order they're in. So let's talk about the order you would like to see these in.
I feel like time to offer, because it should be at the top, because that's the process. You can take personas through that, and you can take them through. You take a persona or a made-up applicant through the current state and say this is the likely time, and then take them through a new. So that'd be relatively light lift. That's almost an MVP, isn't it? That's like a card exercise.
What's a card exercise?
Like card sorting, when you take people through the flow of the site or the flow of the process, and
Gotcha.
just move. I think the increase in diversity is a longer term play. I think sentiment feedback would probably help you understand where you need to put your focus in the other two.
Okay.
And then as much as I'd like it to be at the top, reduction in ghosting is probably the thing you'll see. Again, it'd probably be taking a persona through a process, and once you've got the satisfaction feedback, you'd say, well, actually, I just didn't turn up because whatever. So it'd be on the back of research, and you go and look at Glassdoor, and people don't hold back. And there's, I'm sure, lots of other services that are similar. But it'd be like, what were the reasons why people didn't like our process? We put this in place, and then we put someone through this MVP again, this persona through, and have we overcome these different pain points, and do a sort of a user-centered design model, but on the applicant.
Okay. I think probably for our first sprint review, with 1 or 2 sprints under us, depending on how long we make a sprint, visibility into time of offer, along with the hiring manager pipeline dashboard, is probably where we're going to end up. I'm going to do hiring manager pipeline dashboard, and I think that is a great place for us to start. Now, we've got 5 minutes left here, and so I want to do a little bit of housekeeping. This episode was not live, but the next few will be. We're going to have another pre-recorded one right around the Christmas holiday. But beyond that, we're going to start working with our architect team to talk about data modeling and drawing some diagrams for how this whole app is going to work together, and making sure that we can build it in a way that is, has highly focused feature sets that play well with others. And we're going to be doing some some, I'm going to call it scoping as well, but not in terms of like what the app is going to do or not do from a story perspective, but terms of like, well, okay, we've got this story that Alistair and I worked on, and it's a dashboard. Should we do that with Einstein Analytics, or should we do that with reports and dashboards? That kind of like sort of feature level architecture type thing. And then in the new year, as we close out this year and get into the new year, we're going to start actually doing the engineering work for this. So we'll be writing code, creating Lightning Web Components, creating flows, creating Apex classes, etc., in order to make this start to come together. And in the new year, we're going to have our sprints of recruiting for good. We'll be working on specific things. We'll try and bring in subject matter experts. So I'm not a huge expert in Einstein Analytics, but we'll bring somebody in to help us with that. And then we'll turn around and we'll, work on, I don't know, custom metadata for whatever. And we'll have different guests on to go and work with us there. But every so often, we're going to check back in with Alistair and we're going to show him what we've done. And we'll try to bring in our, say, recruiting subject matter experts in order to show them what we've done on those special editions as well, so that you have an idea of what we're building as we build it, and also whether or not this is meeting the expectations of our product owner and our subject matter experts. And with that, I want to thank you all for tuning in again for this special fried turkey edition of Recruiting for Good. Alistair, thank you again for your time and your wisdom on this. This is going to be amazing. I'm looking forward to it. And do you have any parting words for us?
No, I think it's shaping up to be really interesting. Looking forward to being in the same room with a recruiter and hearing from both sides of the equation how you've been getting on.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for tuning in again, and I will see you all here next week.